is a question. You have said that there's still some evidence that you have not been able to review. How much, and then why not?
So I think one of the main things and one of the big things that we're still waiting on is the Kinematic Artifacts report, taking a look at the paper examination of the ballots. It's a really interesting concept and idea that's never been done before when it comes to elections, but it's based on some science and figuring out what paper is actually used, and is that something we can use to help evaluate elections going forward. In addition, we're expecting to through the the special what is his name? Special master. Special master, we're expecting to get some information and maybe some access to your router log data to get more details and more context surrounding some of the events that we've seen on the computers to understand what they are and to see if there's any other anomalies that are in place. I think those are probably two of the biggest things that are currently outstanding at this stage in time. So I think canvassing is extremely important for a comprehensive election audit. And I was a little bit disappointed that we weren't able to do canvassing officially as part of our audit. I'm thankful for the teams that did go out and knock on doors and ask similar questions to what we would have. There's certain elements that you can only really figure out by knocking on doors. Otherwise, there's too exhaustive of options to go into. So for example, if I go knock on your door and I say, hey, did you vote yes or no? And you say, yes, I did, but the voter roll said you didn't, then I now wonder what happened to your ballot, and additional investigation can go in to try to figure out where or how your ballot didn't get cast on your behalf. On the flip side of it, if I go ask you, did you vote, and you say no, and I have a ballot, you show as voted, then how and where did that vote get cast for you? And canvassing, by allowing you to get that information at that point, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different ways that ballots could be taken in or added to the system. And you can't, the audit would take forever if we tried to go through all, hundreds and hundreds of them, but via going through canvassing, we can get an indication of what could have happened in order to hand that off to a true investigative branch, whether that's your attorney general, whether that's a local police or whatever, to follow through with that and make sure that it gets to completion that it should for those type of events. We wanted to define things to as much detail as we could, but at the end of the day, there's certain powers as an auditor that we don't have that are necessary in collecting criminal evidence. Or for that matter, we have no ability to charge anyone anyway. So we can say all day long that someone committed a crime, but without an attorney general or without the police to make the actual charge, it's meaningless. And I'm certainly staying engaged in election integrity stuff, both in Arizona and in other states, to help make sure that we can have confidence in elections going forward. So we're continuing to investigate, but it is a very different thing than a law enforcement investigation.
What about kinematic artifacts? If you had been given those and the routers and the Splunk logs, would that have helped you prove that there were real problems with voter registration?
So let's give a definition so people know. So kinematic artifact detection is the name of Jovan Pulitzer's trademarked technique for evaluating ballots to determine what paper is being used and other things like their folds or not folds. Is it filled out with a pen? Is it filled out by a computer or a human? All those types of details is part of his kinematic artifact detection. And so that work is ongoing. We're greatly looking forward to that report when it's available. I hear it's soon. I don't have a date besides soon. Soon is a relative term. It's kind of like tomorrow. It's only a day away every single day. As far as the Splunk logs, they would be very useful in giving context as to some of the behaviors and activity that we've seen on the devices. Specifically, there was a breach of data, of voter roll system data that happened around the November timeframe of last year. Several people have received notification if you're on the protected voter list, and it was mostly voter roll information that was listed. You were actually notified about this. And there's some interesting stuff on the internet about what the FBI sees in that case. Now, Maricopa County is saying it's not a real breach because all they did was excessively use the website to get a lot of data versus getting into the network. But we'd really like to see a little bit further, because around the November time period is when the election is going on. And did it have any material impact? Was the access beyond what they expected is? And that's the sort of information that we can tell from the Splunk logs. And the last question that you had on there was about voter rolls. I think voter rolls are very, very, very important. Pretty much every form of fraud requires that voter rolls be inflated, because you need room to cast fraudulent votes of some sort. And if the only people on your voter rolls, the people who vote every single time, there's not room for the various different ways you could get it in. So cleaning the voter rolls and maintaining good voter rolls is essential for proper election integrity. And if we just crack on that alone, it would greatly increase our security. I'm not saying it's the only thing we need to do. Specifically, as an application security expert, I'm very interested in how applications are developed and to whether they are built to the proper best practices standards. Everything I've heard is that everything associated with elections, and some of what I've seen with my own eyes, does not meet the standards that are considered common best practices. Some of the software I've tested in the election space does not follow the best practices I've seen of your average logistics company. And we're talking about software that can help choose the most powerful individual in the world. So this is significant. And similarly, the voter roll systems specifically, we have multiple reports across multiple different states of those systems being vulnerable to vulnerabilities like SQL injection, which basically means an attacker, there's a vulnerability that allows them to get data out of it, or potentially compromise the whole machine. And other problems like that could allow them to be manipulated. In fact, in Pennsylvania, their current voter system it's retiring is called Sure, and it has an interface to it that someone could write their own code to interface with it. And that API, or application programming interface, was actually built by a left-leaning organization and is primarily used by Democratic organizations to access the voter rolls. And I don't know this for a fact myself, but I've been told that there may be, in fact, be a read and write capability from the API, which allow them to potentially change the voter rolls. And anything like that needs to make sure that access is closely controlled, that it can't be taken advantage of, who did what actions. All these are very, very important to ensure the integrity of our systems, because if the voter rolls aren't accurate, everything else comes from them.
Were you surprised, Doug, surprised, because you're smart and you know computers and cutting and pasting and kinematic artifacts, all this stuff. But were you surprised at this whole thing?
I didn't really know what to expect.
Okay.
I kind of came into it saying, okay, it looks like there's something the Lord wants me to do. So let's pray through it every day. Let's figure out what the most important thing is today and attack those issues day by day. But it was a mammoth project. And it challenged me in many, many different ways. Operationally, we had to, lead about 1,500 people. We had manufacturing to build the devices that were out there. We had to count the ballots. We had to fight PR campaigns. I wasn't allowed to speak to the media. We had to, defend us legally in legal challenges. We had all sorts of issues that happen when you have that many people all together. That just happens naturally. But, God is faithful, and He provided the entire team I need to make it happen. But there's still, the only way I survived it was on my knees. I'd get on my knees and pray every single day and say, okay, Lord, I don't know how we're going to get through today. I got all these impossible things that need to happen today. Anywhere from 2 to 5 things, usually every day I had to figure out this or so forth. And by the end of the day, I'd find out that, 2 or 3 of them had happened. Another 2 or 3 weren't as big as deals I thought they were. And, another one of maybe I could put off to the next day. And then we just kept going through it, step by step.
How are you different today than, let's say 6 months ago? You've gone through this. There was no rule book. You're the first one in the nation to coordinate something like this. You did do it. It was accomplished. We all know that. America knows all that. But now here you are today after this time period. How are you different?
I'm still trying to assemble and put that together. I don't know if I have the best answer on that.
Okay. All right.
I will say that, there's things, you take a look at the Old Testament. When God does something magnificent, very frequently he will tell them, go take a pile of rocks and go put it over there, so that when you walk by it in the future and your kids say, hey, Dad, why are those rocks there? You can explain of the goodness of God, of the things that he has done. And so those things that have that impact on your life, I call rock moments, piles of rocks. And I think this was definitely one of those mammoth things. I mean, there was a lot of things coming against us all the time. It constantly seemed like it was impossible. And yet you could always tell that God was in control. And God provided exactly the people that we needed and exactly the resources to make it be successful and make it be executed. I can't take credit for it. I just did my part. It was really the amazing team that he brought forth that made it possible.
How are you different today than 6 months ago?
I think, there's a number of different things. I think I'm probably more patient now. I think that in general, I have a lot of expectations of what God is doing this time, because I can't believe that he would take us through all that and not, have other outcomes in it. This may seem like an odd thing, but I think I really appreciate my family even more. Both the combination of being away from them and the undying support I've had from my wife. I don't remember if I told you this or if we put it on the show last time. I apologize if I repeat anything, but at one point in time when I was off at the audit, my whole family got COVID. And we mentioned before, I've got 11 kids. Okay. So when my wife has COVID and 11 kids have COVID, it's not a pretty sight at the Logan homestead. And so immediately I called her up and I asked her, I was like, hey, do you need me to come home? I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I can do both things at the same time, but you certainly, and she told me, she said, no, you better not come home. You've got a mission you need to get done. This is an important thing that you need to do. And so you're not coming home until we're better or you've accomplished your mission. So just forget about it. We're covered. The church is helping us. Friends are helping us. Everyone is in it. And to me, that was huge. That was huge, because I know how hard it is for her, for me to be gone for that long. And, I thank everyone for praying for me and my family. There's definitely been special grace in all of this, because I've been gone for a week and things are melting down at the house, at times. I was, for the better part of about 5 months, I was gone working on this project, and that was not anticipated initially. So I'm much more appreciated, and I think and grateful of what God's given me. Not that I didn't beforehand, but, it's, when you see the circumstances and see how people react out of it. I also appreciate our country. I've made so many great friends over all of this. I think that's one of the most amazing parts of being part of this, is people who love God, who love our country, who are just trying to find out and do what's right. And just the camaraderie that you have with them, and, the genuine, real friendship, and without all the fakeness. People keep asking me, like, would you do this again if you knew what you had to go through? I definitely would be a little bit more intimidated, but I think I would. I think that's worth it. And I think we haven't even begun to see what this is going to do. I'm praying specifically for revival in our country, and that somehow it'd be tied to this audit, because quite frankly, it doesn't matter what laws we change. If we're not a country that honors God, we're not going to succeed. And the only way that we're going to save our country is if we humble ourselves and pray, turn away from our wicked ways, and then our land would be healed.
Amen. The antivirus system in the county had not been updated in about a year. No patches, no updates. In fact, it was August of 2019 was the last time they even looked at it. Now, that's fact. Was that a surprise to you when you found this fact, when you found this? Was that a surprise to you? So
technically Ben found that, but no, it was not a big surprise to me. I'm not surprised at the lack of cyber hygiene in election equipment. Now it bothers me. And even specifically, if the county was very quick to say the EAC does not allow us to do patches. It does not allow us to do updates if it decertified the machine. Well, it is true that there is a process you have to go through before you can apply a patch. And you need the manufacturer to go through that process to make it happen. but it's actually in the contract that they can ask him to do so. And specifically, the EAC has guidance onto how you would go through and do, de minimis memorandum in order to do it. CISA, which is the organization that oversees cybersecurity in the country for the agencies, and that's not entirely true, but they help the defense, recommends that patches be applied to election system. So there's a lot of documented stuff saying this stuff needs to happen. And no one was paying attention enough, or no one was awake enough, or no one was caring enough to make sure that it happened. And just to step back a little bit so that you understand why it's important, you go, hey, why do I need the antivirus? Why do I need the patches? What does it really matter? We all fall short, and we all make mistakes at times. And it turns out that's true for people who write software. So when they write software and they have mistakes in it, it creates vulnerabilities. And specifically, some of the vulnerabilities that were in that version of the operating system without being patched, any kid could download some software, click a button, and be able to control the system. If they have to be on the same network, they have to be able to connect to it. And obviously it's an air-gapped network. So it's not like it's super simple, but because they have to get physically into the location. But if they physically get into the location, they can compromise the whole machine. And once you're on the machine, it's an election system. It has all the results, it has all the data.
Well, and that's something you also found, that the registration server did get breached.
It's public knowledge that the voter roll system had been breached, or the API taken advantage, or whatever you want to count. I think it was the company said it's not really a breach. I think technically, legally, it is a breach, but anyway.
The count of the paper ballots has been verified, but are those paper ballots real ballots? There's been a lot of discussion about that, as you know, across the country, that not just in Maricopa County, which is where we're at, what we're talking about, but in other states where you had drivers at 12 midnight or 1 in the morning bringing in ballots from who knows where. So what do you say about what you learned in Maricopa County about the paper ballots?
So there's two ways to answer that question. So there can be ballots that were cast by individuals that were not supposed to be allowed to vote. Maybe they're a legal immigrant, maybe they moved at time periods they weren't be able to. So those are illegal cast ballots. But there can also literally be, I'm going to call it a counterfeit ballot. I printed a counterfeit ballot and got it injected into the system. So if that latter case happened, I would hopefully see that in our Kinematic Artifact report that will come out soon. I don't know when soon, but sometime soon. And from the other piece, we'll hopefully see a bit of an investigation, again, to mention our number one finding, our highest, since 23,344 individuals that somehow cast a mail-in ballot from a residence that was no longer their residence anymore. And just so you know, it's against a lot of forward ballots. So it's not like they could just forward it to the new location.
Looking back, something that really was funny, something that happened, or maybe one or two things that now that you're over and you had some sleep, you can look back on and go, well, let me tell you a goofy thing.
I still haven't made it to the sleep part yet. I'm hoping that comes soon. I don't know. I mean, honestly, it was such a high pace. I was working 6 days a week, at least 12 hours a day, often 16 or 17 hours a day. And so a lot of it is a blur. Like, I remember laughing, I remember good times, but you're asking for a specific story. I don't know if anything immediately comes to mind. I've made some lifelong friends through this, like some real lifelong good friends. And we've enjoyed and had some great times, hanging out together. So I'm sure they're going to be like, what about the tie-in that? Oh yeah, I forgot about that. But at least right now, nothing immediately comes to mind.
I appreciate that. So Doug, thank you again for taking time out, and thanks for being so transparent. Any last words before I cut you off?
No, I think I'm good. You don't have to cut me off this time. Maybe next time.
I have a great time with this gentleman, and he's got a great sense of humor. I've seen it improve, actually, over 6 months, Doug. He was very subtle, very very unpretentious, and he still is, but very quiet. I don't know if it's me or because of what he's gone through the last 6 months, but I've seen a change there. You're a little bit more animated, Logan, and I think it's fun, and I'm glad America is getting to see you. So thank you.